Welcome to the Leadership Reckoning Room, the space where leaders are brave enough to look in the mirror and do the real work. I'm Steph, and today we light the lantern with someone who has spent his career at the intersection of performance, culture, and what it truly means for humans to rise to their potential. Simon Curran is the force behind some of the most intentional, high-performance leadership cultures in both sport and business, a builder of teams, a shaper of identity, and a strategist who understands that culture isn't a slogan, it's a lived standard. He serves as the Chief Development and Culture Officer at Rokt, where he helps leaders grow with clarity, courage, and a discipline inside one of the fastest scaling technology companies in the world. Before that, he co-founded All Blacks Performance Labs, bringing the principles of elite sport, purpose, humility, collective excellence into the way organizations develop people and build teams that endure. But titles aren't why he's here. Simon is here because he leads with a rare blend of honesty and intention, a leader who tells the truth with steadiness, who sees the human before the output, and who believes that culture isn't a perk, it's a responsibility. He's the kind of leader we need more leaders to be. So take a breath, set down whatever armor you walked in with, and step into the reckoning with us. Hi, Simon. I'm so thankful you're here.
It's awkward to listen to, but I appreciate the invitation to join you today. It's great to see you.
Every word is absolutely true. And first of all, I love how we met. We met through a co-colleague, and she brought us together. And the first time that we ever spoke, I felt that immediate connection with you in just your humanity and your kindness and who you are as a leader in genuinely wanting to make every experience for every employee the best it can be. And so I've been thankful to know you and to learn from you and to talk with you. So I appreciate that you've made the time to be here with us so we can learn more about you.
Right back at you. And thank you for bringing the community together like you do. Any way I can serve, be part of it, I'm all in.
I know everybody's going to learn so much from our conversation today. So first, maybe just tell us a little bit just about yourself. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get into leadership? And what led you to Rokt?
So I'm a Kiwi that lives between Manhattan and Auckland, which makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Dad of 3 girls, married for going on 20 years. And my first journey into experience of what leadership really, really means is I was fortunate enough as a young child to get offered a place at an institution in New Zealand called Dilworth, which is a scholarship-based school, not for bright kids, not for gifted children, but for kids whose parents couldn't care for them like they wanted to. In the case of mine, parents are separated. We didn't have an abundance of money, but was surrounded with love. And Dilworth painted me an early leadership lesson, which is the greatest wealth you have is that which you give away. And so from a really early doors, I became fascinated by that. Like, why do some do it and why don't others do it? And so that started my trajectory. Started a corporate career, got into advertising, went into business for myself, started investing in other businesses. And as an only child, I think the thing that I was chasing for the first 30 or so years of my career was my ego. Then, about 12 years ago, my then 4-year-old daughter fell off a boat and had a cardiac arrest in the water. And in that moment, I realized that everything I had been chasing was irrelevant. And that took me to a different trajectory. And that took me to a trajectory at understanding people and how do they work and how do we think. And that took me into a coaching journey, which eventually, which we can fill in if that's helpful, took me into Rokt in my current role today.
First, I'm so sorry you went through that with your daughter. I can't even imagine. Like, that hit me to my core.
Can I say I share that not for sympathy or for a punchy way to start a podcast. That's not the intent. Because we were very fortunate. Someone said to us, sometimes in your darkest days, you get your greatest growth. And we were fortunate our daughter made it. And as she made it, and through her rehabilitation, we were introduced to things that we would never, ever have been introduced to. And a short example of that story, our daughter had heart surgery and bits and pieces, and a nurse pulled us into a small room. No windows, no nothing. And she said to my wife and I, she said, "Do you know what your greatest risk is now?" And we're thinking, is that going to be medication? Is it going to be relapse? And she said, no, your greatest risk is you now think you're the victim. not your daughter.
Oh
And the
my gosh.
victim needs a bully, because no bully, no victim. And she said, you're going to spend the rest of your days, if you're not careful, chasing evidence of how unfair life is, and you'll live a life as a consequence of that. And she said, you're going to hear a lot now about post-traumatic stress. It's true, it's real. But she also said the opposite is also possible, post-traumatic growth, and that's a decision. And so our story is a blessing for us, and it's helped us help others as a consequence. So I just anchor it in that, because it's not a doom and gloom story, fortunately.
I love that. I love that. I don't think I've ever heard that, post-traumatic growth. I'm going to use that now because it's so true. And how you show up, it's not what you're doing in the situation, but it's how you're showing up then and then after to handle it.
One of the things we've gone on to learn as people, one of our traits is we collect evidence to prove that we're right about everything. So if I believe it's a traumatic experience, I'll prove it to you. If I believe I've hit a glass ceiling, I will prove it to you. If I believe I'm capable of more than this, I will prove it to you. And in there is, again, the reality of the choice. Is this going to be defining and a plateau, or a redefining and the start of a completely new adventure? So I agree.
I feel like we could just put that on a loop and stop the podcast now. Like, so many people need to hear that. And you framed it and phrased it in a way that resonates, that I think people are going to really hear you. And I can't thank you enough for that. Because boy, I've 2 minutes in and I've already learned something that I'm going to take with me, especially as I lead others, not just for my family or my kids or myself personally, but as I lead others. That's a really amazing way, I think, to process things that happen. So when you meet people, what do you hope people experience in your presence?
I hope they feel that they're seen. My observation of us as people, particularly when things are hard or we're under duress or stress, we spend most of our time in our head. We go into meetings, usually late, in our head. We do the whole meeting in our head. We leave the meeting late in our head. We drive home and yet 30 centimeters away is our heart. And I spend most of my time trying to get people 30 centimeter drop out of their head into their heart, with a belief that from there, magical things are possible. And that's a contagious trait in the best cultures, that they understand that they'll start in their heart and they'll move back up to their head. So I'd like to believe people feel seen, and I'd like to believe it's a safe enough conversation to have the real conversation. But I will say that's my aspiration. That doesn't mean that every time we're together, I'm with someone that's the case. That's not.
Yeah, I'm with you. And that's where I fully am so passionate about human-centered leadership, about caring about the human first and foremost above anything else. And knowing that you can get the most out of people if they know that they are seen and valued and respected and heard, and all of those things that every single human being needs at their core. Each person needs it maybe a little bit differently, but seeing that and starting from the heart, I think we need more of that, especially now. But I think that is what resonates and builds the great humans that you're lucky enough to and privileged enough to lead in great teams and great organizations. I appreciate that. And that's what makes you a great leader, because I think that you do that. You see the people that you are talking to, working with, and leading, and everybody needs that to their core.
I'll give you someone I've had the privilege of doing a lot of work with over the last decade and a bit. There's a guy by the name of Gilbert Enoka. He's the mental skills coach for the All Blacks in New Zealand. He's had that role for 23 years. He stepped out of it for a bit. He's just come in, and in a session we were doing together in a full room, he made the point that people follow your soul before they follow your role. And that always really stuck, because the people that want to hold up their business card, which we don't have anymore, but the equivalent of, like, you need to know my title. Right. But they don't. They need to know what goes on.
It's very true. And I'm working on a book right now. And the chapter that I was just finishing was kind of about that, in why go into leadership in the first place. Like, you need to be going into it for the right reasons. It's not for the business card or the title or for the promotional velocity. It's because you want to, lead with your heart and your soul and make others better. And I think a lot of times, and a lot of the experience that I've had in my past, especially in technology, right? A lot of really strong ICs are promoted to leadership, and they're good about, what they are SMEs in versus being a good leader and being moved into leadership because they have that heart and soul for other people. And I'm writing about that to make sure that people go into leadership for the right reasons in the first place. It's not about ego. It's not about title. It's not about the visibility or the career trajectory. You are then second to your team and to who you lead. And I think ego right now, especially in this world, it creates environments of fear where people can't do their best and be their best. And so I think we really need to, as leaders, check our egos at the door and be self-aware enough to know that we can put ourselves aside and, like you said, lead with our souls and have other people see that, because that's what people will follow. That's a really good quote. I should put that in my SIG.
Isn't it? It's fascinating though, isn't it? That particularly, just for a couple more beats, that the most people's ego is shaped on previous experience.
Yeah.
And the prevailing narrative becomes, oh, it's not my first rodeo. I've been there, done that. I know what happens next. But most leaders are now leading in a world that they haven't been through before. I'm sure we'll come on to talk about this, but there's a chap that we've done some work with by the name of Rich Davini. He was the former commander of SEAL Team 6, wrote a great book called The Attributes and Masters of Uncertainty. And at Rokt, we brought him together with the high performance coach of Cirque du Soleil. So we had Navy SEAL, Cirque du Soleil, and myself, and we designed this immersive full-day leadership session for our top 40 leaders. And at a certain point in that session, Rich Davini, he said, everyone grab a seat. And he said, put your hand up if you're a leader. And everyone put their hand up because it was a leadership group. So everyone put their hands up. He said, put your hand up if you're in charge. And you watch the group go, I think we just did this. And he said, no, we really didn't. And Rich's definition, he said, no, in charge is hierarchy. That's a title. But leadership is not based on that. It's based on followership. So if you call yourself a leader and you turn around and no one's following, I got a surprise for you. And he said, we all know leaders that had no hierarchy, but you'd follow them wherever they ask you to go. And we all know people that had hierarchy that there was no chance you would follow them. I can't help but think the currency of what used to fuel ego is getting increasingly left behind. Yeah. And so this ability to adapt rather than predict what's coming up next, that's going to be the magic by which success and career velocity and trajectory is going to be based on, not your former experience.
Right. Everybody's trying to just figure it out right now. Right. And win the race and be the first in this new era of AI and all things. But you're right. And I can see, I've witnessed leaders stumbling and trying to hang on to that ego, and it's not working for them anymore because they have to now lead in a way that we're going to figure this out together. I'm not going to have all the answers, and I'm not going to be the subject matter expert on this any longer. And I think you're right. That's where the best leaders are going to start shining, is where they know that they can collectively work together to find the answers, because nobody has the answers right now. I can't imagine that leadership offsite. I wish I had been there. Holy smokes. Because I'm a huge Cirque du Soleil fan. Let me just say that right now. But you could package that up and sell that. I'd buy it just for myself. Oh my gosh.
Surprisingly, between all three environments, how much they have in common, how much we have in common. Whether regardless of the terrain, whether it's a tent, a hilltop, or a boardroom, at the most elemental levels, we share so much more in common. And that for us, for that day, it actually became the 3-day, and we continue to work with them. It has been a fascinating journey of swapping paradigms, changing stories. Yeah, it was great.
I read a book recently that was about a man who left corporate, and he'd seen one of the Cirque du Soleil shows, left corporate and went and trained with the Cirque team and learned all about Cirque du Soleil and everything, and then mapped it to what it was like with corporate culture. It was the best book. Okay, so who is someone who has shaped your leadership philosophy in a way that you still carry it today? I mean, who you are, I know, like through life experiences, that's kind of what shapes us, and how we've already talked about how we take what life has given us and how we deal with it and how we handle it. But is there someone or a leader specifically, or someone in your life that helped you be who you are and the leader that you are today?
Yeah, a couple have helped me. My rugby is our national game in New Zealand. My first 15 captain when I was, so the head of our senior team when I was at school, a guy by the name of Jerry Smuts, he taught me a lesson of never let anyone, don't ask anyone to do anything you're not prepared to do yourself. That really stuck with me. The MD of the company I first worked with, Peter Keane, taught me that you need to be able to talk to the very top of the organization and someone at the bottom of the organization, likely the same people. Like that for me has been foundational. More recently, Bruce Buchanan here at Rokt, that when you're trying to do hard things, it's hard. And there's a certain fountain of belief that a founder needs to run through walls that people think are impossible to run through, and traversing that, the ability to connect well with people, to provide them with clarity and have the courage to keep doing courageous things, that would be a through line for me. I hadn't thought about bringing those three people together, but that would be a fascinating beer if I did. That really would.
Oh, for sure. My second episode I did was with Sierra Slack, who is my daughter's lacrosse coach at Occidental College. And I was an athlete. It feels like yesterday, but it was not yesterday. I played very competitive fast pitch softball and volleyball. And I think that being an athlete translates to the workplace tremendously. And Sierra and I talked about that. I want to get into that with you a little bit as well, as just from learning on the field. You learn life lessons on the field or on the court as an athlete that will take you for the rest of your life. And I'm just always intrigued with how athletes transition. It feels a little bit easier into the workplace, and what you learn and what you are taught from coaches, because your athletic coaches are the same kind of leaders. They have the same types of grounding that you need when you're young into when you then go into leadership in corporate or in the workplace.
I completely agree, Steph. So for me, sport is one of the most pure petri dishes of performance. I think one of the reasons is because it's so binary. You either win or you lose, and there's a scoreboard and there's a clock, and so our journey into studying and working with elite athletes particularly started shortly after our daughter's injury. We were going through a rehabilitation phase ourselves, and we became fascinated by two questions, which still drives me in my job here today at Rokt. Number one, what separates the best from the rest when performing under pressure? And number two is, what's the difference between a team of champions versus a championship team? Because on a PowerPoint slide, we'll argue they're the order of words, but in reality, as you know, these things are worlds apart. And so a team of champions, I walk into the room feeling like I'm a 7 out of 10, but when we're together as a team, we're only like 5 out of 10, and somehow we leak a point or two. But championship teams are the opposite. I come in as a 6 or a 7, but we play as an 8. And so that took us studying different environments, from pit lanes to boardrooms to symphony orchestras to ballet to rugby to Cirque du Soleil, etc. And one of the things that's unusual about that environment is there's a certain sort of standards that are expected and demanded in categories like sport that should translate across to enterprises, but don't always do.
Right.
Some very, very tangible ones. Like 90% of Olympic athletes visualize on a daily basis. 94% of elite coaches do. I'm told that 7% of executives have ever done it.
Wow.
Now, our vessel is the same, but the story we tell ourselves is radically different.
Yeah.
In high-performance sport, the greatest feedback loop is from your peer. And it's not a formal moment. It's on the court or the field as they turn to you and say, hey. But in organizations, we often wait for performance reviews or calibration discussions. And that's usually one-way traffic, and the hardest traffic is that way. They often feel like, I can't give you that feedback because that might interfere with our friendship. But in elite sport, they say the highest form of friendship is to be the unreasonable friend because you believe more in that other person. So But then when you're in sessions, so we bring athletes into organizations and we work with them. And one of the most common misnomers is, look, this is all very interesting, but you have to understand you play for 80 minutes and I'm working 80-hour weeks. So this doesn't compare. And in part that's true, but an elite athlete can be dropped for being very good, but not exceptional.
Yeah.
Or can be dropped because of how they performed in training or what they did off the field. So that does not translate. So as young aspiring executives, and we watch programs or movies, and as kids we had pictures on walls of these heroes, but we don't believe that we should strive for it ourselves. So that for me is fascinating.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by that piece of data that you shared about visualization. It's so true. And it's fully translatable. If you think about how you were going to visualize how you were going to show up into a meeting or to an offsite before you walk into that room, you have a higher chance of setting the environment up as a trusted environment than if you just walk in and wing it and assume you're going to know kind of everything. I try and do that for myself just as a growth opportunity of, even just talking with you. I really sit and visualize how I want the conversation to go and all of the things that I want to make sure that I get to ask you and say to you in gratitude in a short amount of time. And even then I still stumble, but at least you're setting yourself up for a little bit of more success. And it shows you're being self-aware that you don't have it all together, that you can always learn and grow in every single situation.
Fortunately, Steph, my guess is we're going to see a lot more of that sort of stuff coming up soon. And we're going to see that because there's going to be a race to not only how do we get the best people, but get the best out of our people.
Yeah.
In time gone by, I think that was a nice thing to think about, but now it's going to be a real accelerated drive to it because of the disproportionate upside of it.
Yeah.
Now, regardless of tenure or title, the reality is we're built the same way. That's just a statement of fact. And a little while ago at a Rokt conference, we brought in Stephen Kotler. He's a credible author. He created something called the Flow Institute. And he was talking to us about this very fact around visualization, but specifically that our brain can't tell the difference between something that's real and something that's imagined. Now we can prove that. But what he also told us is that what drives our thinking system, we have two levers that determine our progress. We're either driven by fear or driven by goals. And our mindset, which looks like one word, but we might argue it's two, mindset, it comes preset. And we are preset to look for danger. Because back in the day, saber-toothed tigers were about to make things real. When there was a rustling in the bush, treat that like that's a real thing. So what would happen is we walk into a room and we don't have saber-toothed tigers anymore. We've swapped them for other people's opinions.
Yeah.
So we walk into a room, we scan the micro movement in people's faces to work out, am I safe here? That's a system driven by fear.
Yes.
But we can reset it. And when you reset your mind, and things like visualization are but one tool to help reset, then we move from a fear system into a goal system. But for goals, they have to be visceral. They have to very much be felt. And so when we study the difference between what separates the best from the rest under duress, most of those highest performing teams start their work at an individual level. And they get the individuals in that team to think about how they think. So they ask questions, Steph, for you to be at your best, what will it take? And when you're not at your best, what am I going to find out? Because I should know that before I confront that. And when an individual can answer a question like, what would it take for this to be your best year yet? 20% better personally and professionally than any year you've ever had. Now, we ask that question out loud here at Rokt often, but when you ask that for the first time, you watch people go, that's an oxymoron. You can't have both. I can't be better at home and at work, surely. But when you say, no, you've cracked the algorithm, somehow you managed to do it. What did you do? What did you say yes to? What did you say no to? Who did you spend more time with? And what did they give you? Who benefits the most when you're at your best? And what do you give them? Like you could see their face. The more descriptive someone can answer that question, the sharper the goal is.
Yeah.
Which means we get sort of magnetically pulled towards it. Now, most people, most executive leaders listening to this we'll be able to recite ad nauseum for a board, our metrics are this, talent velocity is that, rate of promotional velocity, spans, layers, very, very clearly. If the board said, tell me you, what would it take for you to have your best year? As people, we often, oh, no, it's good. It's, I need more balance. That's not a visceral answer. That's just a soundbite.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't go into a board where they say, what's the people strategy? Oh, it's just to be better, to find some balance. Yeah. So we accept it in one part, but not in the other, like athletes as opposed to individuals. Yeah. The intersection, the more we get understanding of these things, and neuroscience now helps with this, because it's not woo-woo, it's factually based. Mm-hmm. I think there's a massive unlock coming up soon.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things I always asked my team at the beginning of every year as we're setting goals and commitments is, let's talk about what the end of the year looks like. What is the story that you want it to say? What do you want the end of the year story to be about you? And let's build the work back plan, not like towards that, but visualize at the end of the year. How do you see the end of this year going? Just like you spoke. And so that's always the way I would start that. And you're right. It's a different way to approach it, but I think it opens people up a lot more. They're like, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. Usually it's like, well, like you said, I want work-life balance. I want to get promoted. I want these things. But instead, what's the whole collective story that I'm going to be able to tell about you, or that you're going to be able to share about yourself at the end of the year? And let's work that plan back and create goals that help you get to that place.
Which, once again, very familiar in a corporate setting. I mean, even language like, so if I was coaching anyone on this call, I'd get them to do a PR FAQ about themselves. Mm-hmm. So Amazon taught us this ability to work backwards, and what's the press release. But if you do that for yourself, imagining it's 12 months from today, what press release would you like out about yourself? Yeah. Not whether you were promoted or not, but you 20% better personally and professionally.
Right.
And when someone writes that story, and but without getting stuck on the how, that's the paradox of the how, it traps most of us. If you write it from a good state, a position of enthusiasm and energy, you will surprise yourself how amazingly you can write it. And then when you ask yourself the questions, your brain answers them back. Fantastic tool for lifting performance.
Yes, absolutely. I learned that from my therapist, because a lot of times I ask the questions in my mind, like, what if this or what if that? And she goes, do you ever actually answer those questions for yourself in your head? And I'm like, no, because when you leave a question just kind of hanging out there, it's noise. It's no extra noise in your head. And if you answer it, it gives you a more concrete vision of how to handle that particular thing, and then anything else in the future. And so I've tried to practice that myself. I find myself doing that a lot now. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Rokt. I mean, Rokt is growing. It's growing and scaling at a pace that most companies never experience. It's an incredible company. What, in your position, does it take to build a culture? Because culture is everything. That's why people will come to a company. That's why people will stay at a company. And that's why people will leave a company. But how do you build a culture that can actually keep up with the kind of velocity that Rokt is seeing? A lot of companies are changing at the most rapid pace right now, and employees are feeling really unsettled and uncertain because of it. But culture is what can ground them. How are you keeping your organization grounded in your culture?
We like to refer to culture as the things that people do when no one's watching.
Yeah.
That's our grounding. Being polite when someone important, so that's not culture. That's pageantry. That's lovely. But culture is, it's Tuesday evening in winter and we're a little bit ratty with each other, then what shows up? And we use a framework that we help our teams with, and this is what we aspire to. It's not what we are every day, but we are always working towards this. Our view is that culture gets stood up by a triangle, which we split into three things, particularly as we coach it. And the three ingredients to that is connection, clarity, and courage. And for us, aside from our values, which are guide behaviors, this is like the mindset that helps us get into the mode. When running this fast, into a tunnel, we're not quite sure what's at the other end of it. Those three ingredients, for me, are the magic that separates best from rest. And they're those three ingredients in that particular order. And the reason for that order is that what's happening at a time like this often is that someone will walk into a room in a team and say, well, what's the problem? What's the problem? And they'll be told that the team's after the answer to this, they're after clarity. And the leader or the person with hierarchy says, oh, you want clarity? I'll give you clarity. And they tell people what to do. And the problem is, if you give a room clarity without connection, then people take it as an instruction. And they go away and do it, and they come back and say, what else now? Similarly, if we ask people to be courageous without having clarity, then they'll take that. Then we've got motivated idiots running around doing brave things, not sure why we're doing it. So what we try and do is build connection first, which is regular beats of how are you? How are you really? What can we learn? What's going on? Then on top of that, the thing we probably need the most continual work on is the clarity level, which is continually reminding people of context. It's an easy corner to cut, but we know it all plays back on us. And then when we've got those in place, then we can ask people to be courageous. But it's a hard season, this one.
Yeah.
And so we're working very, very hard on those particular 3 ingredients.
Yeah. That's huge, really, because if you don't connect with the people, they might not listen to then what you have to say or bringing the clarity piece in. So you have to get them in a trusted environment that they feel connected and part of something huge. And then even if you don't have full clarity of what it looks like, if you give a scaffolding or the North Star, that's a lot of times enough for people to go, okay, I don't know exactly how this is going to go, but I get where we're going and I'm on board because you've created that connection. I think one of the things I'm learning from a lot of companies right now is that clarity isn't there and employees are suffering because of it. The connection's not there first and foremost, but then the clarity is not there. No, companies and employees feel like they're just, like you said, they don't really kind of know where they're going or what they're doing, and they're not feeling then connected as a team, moving towards a North Star. And I've said this before, but it always feels like AI will bring the clarity, but AI is not bringing the clarity, and neither are the leaders who, like you said, used to be able to lead with ego because they were the SMEs. They knew everything, they had the experience, and now they don't. So they're struggling to get clarity for themselves. But it's chaos right now. And I think just even a little bit of clarity helps people feel grounded and knowing what they're working. People want to know what the purpose of their work is and what they're working towards. So I think clarity right now is especially huge.
Steph, so much in what you've just said there. I mean, let's just step through these 3 ingredients again. And the only reason for doing this is, for me, at time when it feels like everything is changing and moving so quick, we've found it to be very helpful to give leaders a Sesame Street simple model that they can always reorientate themselves on. And for me, connection, clarity, and courage is about as Sesame Street simple as it comes. Why is that? Connection, I think at the moment we're confusing connection with proximity. And we're having too many discussions of how often are we back in and how often are...
Yes.
But I could sit next to you for a decade and not know who you are or what drives you. Connection is different. And in an all-black environment, they'll talk about intimacy, this idea of into me you see. Completely here. This is me. This is all I got. And we know in the highest performing teams, this idea of belonging, the definition is to be accepted for who you are and expected to bring your best. That's the social contract. So if we have that in connection, and so one of the rituals that we use here is this idea of, again, I've taken this from an all-black environment, is to connect before you correct. That the first 5 minutes or so, the first allocation of time in a meeting is to connect the room up. It's to get people out of their heads into their hearts. So we do connection rounds. That might be gratitude, that might be celebrating a win. One of the exercises we'll do, if I'm in a boardroom here, it's got 12 seats. Everyone writes their name down in a jar. We pass the jar around. I draw out a name. It's Steph. Okay, I'm up first. I've got to do 3 things. Acknowledge a win Steph has had recently. Let the room know the gift that Steph brings to this team. And the one thing I've learned about Steph is this. Now, by the time I take 30 seconds to do that, Steph feels fantastic. Then we go around. Then we may have in an hour meeting have wasted or invested 7 minutes connecting the room up. But the rest of that meeting flows brilliantly. And so the harder the topic for us, the more important connection is. That's the connection layer. Clarity, the old persona of leadership, is like a symphony orchestra conductor. Brings this magical group of artists together. They play magically, but only when the conductor stands in front with a wand or whatever that thing's called, and taps it and conducts. But they can only conduct because in front of them they've got score music, but the problem is now the score's out of date. But the outdated leaders are still pretending it's not. And they think their role is to have all the answers, when what we're seeing is it's to ask the most questions. So our analogy here is be less like a symphony orchestra and more like a jazz band. Create the room for people to jam and to get it wrong, but then to riff and to play, and then incredible things take place. And that takes us into courage. Because when a room is connected and we're a jazz band, there's courageous acts, but at its core, one of the things we're reminding ourselves now is we have far more two-way doors in front of us than one-way doors. And for discussions like AI or organizational change or organizational redesign, I think we're using the word risk like a safety blanket. And we're saying, no, we're taking it. Well, at Rokt, our kind of mantra now, the founders, is 2 words: risk on. As long as we don't in any way breach our security protocols, we're going to take more risks in how we set ourselves up to win, because we think there's an abundant upside for a small number of organizations. So in the context of that, we've done things like moved our layers from 7 or 8 to 6 to 5 to 4. And in some parts of our business now, there's 3 layers between a graduate and the founder. That blows out spans. On average, we're 5. They became 8. Some are 20, some are 38, 40, which defies all the logic of how are you going to compromise how you lead someone if you're looking after 40 people, only to find, recent engagement, some of our highest leaders have the largest spans and the highest engagement. Because they've used tools like a coach in the pocket through AI to give you real-time feedback. And they can still do the moments that matter most. They just don't pretend that's a work in progress meeting, because that more often was rifling through work, not knowing how are you really. So we use that as our playbook in these moments, which still it's hard on culture. It's really hard on culture at the moment. But we don't want to relinquish the pursuit of speed because we think we're in a rare moment at the moment that we can't.
Yeah. Boy, so much to learn from you there, especially now. And you're doing something right, because Rokt is growing so quickly and is the place people want to be. So you're doing it right. And I learn so much from you every time I talk to you, but in that bit just right there, as I talk to other companies about how they're handling the same thing, hopefully people are going to be listening and learning a lot from you from that perspective, especially with how, we talk about AI and what are the things that we can do different with AI. And you just mentioned one in there, the in-pocket coach, AI coach, like that's just one simple thing. I think that will lift leaders to be better in the moment. And that's what we need, is in the moment. So for example, if I'm having a difficult conversation coming up, I can say, oh gosh, what are the things I need to remember so that I can make sure that connection is solid as I'm having this conversation of clarity with somebody, and appreciating them as a human, even if the conversation is hard. And I think that's one of the easy things that AI has brought, I think, to leadership specifically, but I just wanted to call that out. What's a misconception you see that leaders have about AI, either overestimating it or underestimating it?
I think both of those things are true as a first comment. But at a first principle, I think the largest risk is we think this too shall pass, and as a consequence, we're being more tentative than we should be, writ large. So we went through this. You often hear this soundbite that AI is as much a cultural transformation as a technology, and that's an interesting soundbite. But when you say to people, "So what exactly does that mean?" Well, from that point, it gets a little bit ropey. Like people aren't quite sure how to answer it, and so 12 months ago, February of last year, our founder stood in front of the organization and said, we think 25 to 45% of our jobs will be displaced within 6 months. He said, I'm telling you that we have an advantage. We're fast scaling, so we're hiring. Our opportunity now is to retrain and redeploy as many people as we possibly can. And that started a rampant 14 or so months developing an AI playbook that has completely transformed culturally and from an operational perspective, the way that we worked. To link that to your question on misconceptions, one of the things that we see is that we made some foundational decisions that have helped us on the way through. The first, which I think is a misconception, but is also an opportunity, we chose to make this feel more like a movement than a mandate for management. Because we found our people are already tired. So if we tell them off or say you must, we won't get the results. So that was B1. Second is we had to burn the boats sufficiently that they were clear we're not going back to the way that we were. And thinking that people will get there by their own accord, I think that's another misconception. So we created beats, we called them symbols of reinvention. Every 6 weeks, we'd drop a symbol of reinvention across the business that would help people think, we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto, this is different. An example, in that all-hands meeting, our founder made this proclamation, and he said, we're going to go through this as quickly as we can so we can turn and help our clients go through it. And a large part of my time now is helping our clients with an AI playbook that we developed as a private founder-led AI-based business in New York. A number of our clients aren't those things, so we're helping them now through it. So he's sharing this, and then he said, I know what you're thinking. You're going to think, I just don't have the time for this. And he was standing in front of a big screen. He said, can you see what's happening behind me? And then code started running, an algorithm. And he said, that is now wiping every one of your reoccurring internal meetings. I'm taking them all out. And you'd watch people produce their phone like, it's gone. So he said, I've just given you back the gift of time.
Wow.
Now you need to take that time with a minimum viable meeting mindset and save as much time as you can to learn. And that launched a whole training series that we did, which led to the third part of your answer, and my answer to what's a misconception. Most people have approached this race, and I think it is to a degree a race, with this change, thinking that the greatest issue here is tool set. And so our call was, let's not make it a tool set thing. So anything that passed our security protocols, we gave pro access, enterprise access to 100% of our staff. We weren't going to choose between Gemini and Grok or Claude or OpenAI. So we could say it's not tool set. And they'd say, then is it the skill set? And we'd say no, because these things are so good, they'll teach you how to use them. So if it's not tool set and it's not skill set, then the thing we're solving for here is mindset. And so we're watching a group of people within our organization and outside it, some of them flourishing because they're going through an identity advantage. I understand it's not what I used to do, it's how I was and how I think that's helping me flourish. And then another group going through an identity crisis because they're thinking what I used to do defined who I am. And so we're bringing in a range of other environments, coaches of Olympic athletes, leaders from elite military and others, to ask them, as you transition people through moments where their identity was one thing and now it's another thing, what can we learn from you? And it is startling what we have coming back to us.
Wow.
Because we are so blinkered, usually focused on what our day job is, without realizing that civilization has had moments of transition before. So this is different, but there's a lot we can learn. And so the final piece, when you double tap on this idea of it's a cultural transformation, the question we asked ourselves, when was the last cultural transformation writ large? And we went to COVID. So, okay, what do we learn from COVID? And what we diagnosed is that the prevailing conversation in COVID was, will we all get through this?
Yeah.
Now the prevailing conversation is different. Now the prevailing conversation is, am I going to make it?
Yeah.
And that one distinction summarizes what's in front of us. This is a much more insular, siloed, scary place to be at an individual level. Because all of a sudden, I don't know if I'm competing with you or collaborating with you. So for that reason, this journey should feel like a movement that encourages people to play, that celebrates success, that does not involve consultants, help our people learn from our people, provide access, celebrate it. So I'll give you to share an article we've prepared, which is how do we teach 800 people to reimagine their roles? And as an example, our people organization is half the size now it was a year ago, with no forced attrition. But our productivity and the quality of our product has never been as good. And any person that chooses to leave this journey, whether we want them to go or not, will leave so much better equipped for the next job they go in. And that's a gift for all of us.
Wow. Simon, that's everything. I don't know any other company that's approaching it that way, to be honest. because the fear of being first is overshadowing the piece about shifting mindsets first and foremost, and bringing, it's back to your connection and clarity principles, right? Like, it's creating the connection so that then people can decide for themselves. If you shift your mindset, or you really allow people to take the time to think for themselves about how they want to approach this, then they can decide if this is for them or not, or where they want to go. I know that it's an epiphany for a lot of people in technology right now to go, okay, well, if I'm not doing this, that's made me and who I am and made me a lot of money to this point in time, who am I? What am I going to do? And I think a lot of people are seeing, gosh, you know what? I was probably in this role for the comfort of it. It's not maybe what my passion or purpose is. And so then you can really think about specifically what you want to do with your life. And I think that's really important. So I hope a lot of companies listen and hear that that's where you start. And it doesn't have to slow you down to start that way, because Rokt is still like moving so quickly and doing so well. But if you really take what's important and start there, then I think that you can move a lot more quickly than the other companies who are just focusing on winning the race.
Really well said.
That's so great. I want to make this podcast 2 hours with you, and I don't want to say anything. I just want to give you the mic so that everybody can learn from you, because I'm sitting here going, just listening and learning and thinking, oh crap, I got to ask him another question. I just want to listen to him speak. I'm the host here. What? So you mentioned a simple Sesame Street model a little bit ago. What does that mean for the listener?
I'll give you one. And this is, we take it from the world of sport. We work with it with executives. And if you drew it on a whiteboard, I think the algorithm for high performance is really, really simple. The equation is your performance equals your potential less what distracts you. Performance equals potential less distraction. Now, often in organizations, we spend most of our time on the first two words, performance and potential. Calibration rounds are predicated on that. I don't think you're performing to your potential, or yada. We don't spend enough time on the third word, which is our distraction. Mm-hmm. And for a moment, I don't mean organizational distraction. So what we know to be true is, as an individual, we have more distractions now on a daily basis than our grandparents had in a lifetime. Because our phones rattle, our wristbands, our ankle bracelets, it's all like 24/7, regardless of where we are. And we have different distractions, but when you group them together, we have the same largest distraction. That's called our inner voice. It's the way we talk to ourselves. And we think it's a really unique story. But when you double click onto that, we've got two personas in there, the coach and the critic. Mm-hmm. Now, we need both voices. Unfortunately, the melody of them is out of whack. Our critic is taking up too much headspace at the moment. And the coach's voice is one of reason and enthusiasm. You could be extraordinary, Steph. That book's going to... That's the coach. And the critic says, I'm sorry, who do you think you... So this is a challenge for us. And it's an increased challenge in times of uncertainty, stress, and prolonged ambiguity. So the greatest gift we can give ourselves is not to wait for an organization to say, here's a playbook and here's the time and here's how you do it. It's to realize that we are authors of our own story. And when you're clear around what is it that I'm chasing, and on this very one session, we've talked about the idea of the best year yet, and I gave you a collection of questions to think about. And what would need to be true, 20 and 20%. What did you say yes to? When you're clear on what success looks like, and you're clear on where you're starting from, and you know that the single largest thing between you and that definition, it won't be the market, it's not going to be the exchange rate, it's not going to be AI, it's going to be your mindset. Mm-hmm. And with that clear, we start to design a journey. And the fuel for this journey will be momentum. And the way that we define it, momentum is you win a moment, you win a second moment, and when you win 3 moments, you have momentum in any facet of life. That's a Gilbert Enocharism. So if it was that simple, and if the difference between what separates the best from the rest when under pressure is that as an individual, I turn up at my best so that we can play at our best, then we become the best. Yeah. Regardless of how sophisticated the next LLM will be. And my guess is what's happening at the moment is that we are so fascinated by what happens next with technology, we've forgotten some of the lessons we got from the ancients.
Yeah.
So that would be my hope, that we'll find more lessons from adjacent environments, like how does an Olympian go through a moment of transition or elite soldier, than just waiting for what Claude will tell us back. If we do both, that's remarkable. That'd be my hope. And our journey, my wife and I, started through trauma. It took a cardiac arrest of our daughter to go through this. And so our journey now as a couple is to try and help people go through change without requiring trauma. Because most of us write things down on lists that one day they'll do, but they never do until trauma says you must. That's about as perverse formula for a human as there's ever been. So
Yeah.
to the extent this conversation helps anyone to the journey, you've got my details, reach out. Thank you for what you're doing, Steph, the books you're writing, the podcast you're running, the community you develop. Any way that we can help each other through this, we should all be all in.
I can't thank you enough, Simon, for your honesty and for everything you brought today to our listeners. I'm telling you, like, I am so grateful for you. I learned so much. You helped us see that leadership isn't about pushing harder. It's about becoming someone that others can rise alongside and building environments where honesty is safe and purpose is shared and excellence is something that you practice together, not that you perform alone. And so to everyone listening, take a breath and just listen to this conversation multiple times, because you'll learn so many things from it every time you do. And remember that self-reckoning isn't about perfection. It's about the practice of staying awake to who you're becoming, especially in the moments when the room is quiet and the choice is yours. So until next time, keep the lantern lit and keep doing the real work to light the lantern for yourself and for those around you.